Room 613. The fluorescent lights in room 613 never fully turned off. Even at night, they hummed faintly, casting everything in a sickly glow that made the shadows pool in strange corners. I'd been staring at them for hours? Days. Time felt wrong here, stretched thin like old elastic that might snap at any moment. I woke up in this room a week ago. At least that's what Dr. Evans told me. The first thing I noticed wasn't the industrial smell of bleach, or the metal bed frame bolted to the floor, or even the wire mesh embedded in the window glass. It was the water stain on the ceiling, a sprawling brown shape that sometimes looked like a face when my eyes unfocused. I tried not to look at it directly anymore. I'm pretty sure it blinks. And sometimes when I stare at it too long, the ceiling seems to stretch upwards, the room expanding into a vast, empty space with no walls and no end. But then I blink and it's just a room again, small and suffocating. They say my name is Jane. Just Jane, like I'm some unclaimed thing that washed up on a shore. Dr. Evans told me this during our first session, his wire-rimmed glasses catching the light in a way that made his eyes disappear completely. "You've experienced a traumatic event," he said, writing something in that leather-bound notebook he always carries. "A break from reality. We're here to help you piece things back together." But what pieces? My mind feels like an empty room, echoing with footsteps that might be memories. Or maybe it's the footsteps of someone outside my door, pacing back and forth, their rhythm as erratic as the beat of my own anxious heart. Every session starts the same way. "Do you know why you're here, Jane?" And every time I shake my head, watching his pen scratch across the page. They won't tell me. Not Dr. Evans, not the nurses with their too tight smiles, not even the orderly who brings my medication 3 times a day. "You'll remember when you're ready," they say. But ready for what? What could be so terrible that they'd rather let me sit here drowning in questions than just tell me the truth? The medication comes like clockwork. Yellow pills in the morning that taste like chalk and make everything feel slightly off-center. I arrange them on the bedside table before swallowing them, 3 in a perfect triangle, no more, no less. The blue ones at lunch turn the world underwater, and I have to count the bubbles that rise to the surface, making sure they're always an odd number. White ones at night that are supposed to help me sleep but only seem to make the dreams more vivid. Dr. Evans says they'll help clear my mind, help me remember who I am. But lately, I'm not so sure I want to remember. Something about the pills bothers me. Yesterday morning, I noticed dark veins spreading from my fingers up my arm after taking the yellow ones. When I showed the nurse, she said my arm looked perfectly normal. But I can still see them, pulsing beneath my skin like black worms burrowing deeper, forming intricate patterns, perfectly symmetrical. The ward itself is what you'd expect from a psychiatric hospital in the 1960s, long corridors with flickering lights. A common room where patients gather during the day, and the constant smell of industrial cleaner that never quite masks something underneath. Something metallic. Sometimes I catch myself thinking it smells like copper. Like blood. There are other patients here, of course. Mrs. Albright sits in the corner of the common room, her gnarled fingers working endlessly at her knitting. Click, click, click. The nurses say she hasn't spoken in years, just sits there with those milky eyes fixed on nothing. But sometimes when I walk past, I catch her staring at me, a flicker of recognition in her gaze that sends chills down my spine. Emily paces the halls, having conversations with empty chairs, her voice a high-pitched sing-song that sets my teeth on edge. Ms. Davis, the former professor, thinks she's Marie Antoinette. They're all lost in their own private hells just like me. But at least they know why they're here. The dream started on my 3rd night. Just fragments at first, flashes of images and sensation that slipped away when I tried to focus on them. A kitchen with white tiles. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Something red spreading across the floor. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around my legs like restraints. In the dreams, my hands are never empty. They hold a knife, a glint of silver in the harsh light, and the blade is always dripping, always perfectly clean. That's when I started noticing things. Little details that don't quite add up. Like how the number on my door sometimes reads 614 when I'm sure it was 613 the day before. Or how the emergency lights in the hallway cast shadows in impossible directions. Or how sometimes late at night I hear music. Beautiful, delicate music like from an old music box. The first time I heard it, I followed the sound down the dark corridor. The emergency lights made everything look green and wrong, and the shadows seemed to move away from my feet as I walked. The music led me to a door I'd never seen before, tucked away in an alcove that seemed to bend the darkness around it. That's when I heard the warning. Just a whisper right behind my ear, "Don't touch it." I spun around, but the hallway was empty. When I looked back, the door was gone. Or maybe it was never there at all. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my fractured mind. That's when the headaches started. Not normal headaches. These feel like something writhing behind my eyes, pressing against them from the inside. The pain comes in waves, each one bringing flashes of something. A kitchen knife catching fluorescent light. Red droplets hitting white tile. The coppery taste of blood in my mouth that won't go away no matter how many times I rinse. And with each wave of pain, the walls of the ward seem to dissolve, the faces of the other patients morphing into grotesque masks, their voices a cacophony of screams and whispers. I tried telling Dr. Evans about it during our morning session. His pen stopped moving across the page just for a moment, just long enough to make me wonder what he wasn't telling me. The light caught his glasses again, turning them into mirrors, and for a split second, I swear I saw something moving in their reflection. Something that wasn't in the room with us. The medications may take time to fully stabilize your perceptions, he said carefully, adjusting those reflective glasses. Try to focus on what you know is real. But how can I know what's real when my own body feels like it's betraying me? The black veins have spread past my elbows now, a web of darkness pulsing beneath my skin. Sometimes I catch them moving when I'm not looking directly at them, like they're trying to reach something. Or escape something. And when I touch them, they writhe beneath my fingertips as if trying to break free. Last night, I woke up to find my sheets soaked through. Not with sweat, with blood. But when I turned on the light, it was gone. Just like the door. Just like the veins whenever anyone else looks at them. Just like Emily, who disappeared 3 days ago. No one else seems to remember Emily. When I asked about her, the nurse looked at me strangely. "Who's Emily?" she said, checking my chart. But I remember her. I remember her conversations with empty chairs. I remember how those chairs were always cold. And I remember the sound she made the night she disappeared, not quite a scream, more like the noise a music box makes when you wind it too tight. The music box. I keep hearing it at night, its melody getting clearer, more insistent. Sometimes I catch myself humming along to a tune I shouldn't know. The other day I found myself arranging my pills in perfect geometric patterns on my bedside table, just like the limbs of the woman in my dream. Her arms outstretched, her legs bent at precise angles, her head tilted just so. Perfect. That's when I started going to the library. It's small, just a few shelves of medical texts and outdated magazines, but it's quiet and the nurses rarely check on you there. At first, I was just trying to stay awake to avoid the dreams that kept getting more vivid. More real. Dreams of arranging things. Making them perfect. Behind a shelf of psychiatric journals, I found a box of old newspapers. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold them, but the headlines burned themselves into my brain. Riverside Ripper claims sixth victim. Female killer targets young women, music box murderer apprehended. The articles were from 1963. They described a series of murders, 6 women, all found in their homes, posed like dolls around an antique music box. The killer had arranged them carefully, washing away the blood, dressing them in clean clothes, positioning their faces into serene, almost blissful smiles. In each case, the music box was found playing the same tune. A haunting, childlike melody that seemed to linger in the air long after the music box itself had fallen silent. The same tune I hear every night. The last article included a photograph of the music box. Ornate brass and dark wood, with delicate filigree around its edges. I recognized it instantly, though I couldn't say from where. Maybe from my dreams. Maybe from somewhere else. A cold dread crept over me, a feeling of recognition that chilled me to the bone. When I went to put the papers back, I noticed something dark seeping from behind the wall panel. At first, I thought it was just water damage, but when I touched it, my fingers came away sticky. Red. The panel shifted under my hand, revealing a narrow space behind it. Inside was a notebook. Not Dr. Evans' leather-bound one. This was older, the pages yellow and brittle. The handwriting inside looked like mine, but the dates were from 1963. Entry after entry describing the most perfect arrangements. The most beautiful smiles. The most wonderful music. July 14th. The music guided my hands. She was so much more beautiful this way, at peace. Finally. August 2nd. He struggled. It was messy. But the music calmed him. They all find peace eventually. September 10th. 3 this time. A family. They look so happy now, forever frozen in a moment of joy. The notebook fell from my trembling hands. The memories weren't fragments anymore. They were flooding back in perfect, crystalline clarity. Every detail, every arrangement, every beautiful pose. The metallic scent of blood, the feel of cold skin, the way the light glinted off the blade. I remember now. I remember everything. It started with my dollhouse when I was 7. Everything had to be just so. The tiny furniture arranged at perfect right angles. The little family posed in flawless tableaus. Mother in the kitchen, father in his study, children at the table, each one positioned with mathematical precision. If anyone moved them even slightly, I'd feel this tightness in my chest. This unbearable wrongness that wouldn't go away until everything was perfect again. As I got older, the need for perfection grew. My room was immaculate, books arranged by height and color, hangers exactly 1 inch apart, bed corners folded at precise 45-degree angles. The world outside was chaos, but in my space, everything was perfect. Everything was controlled. The first one wasn't planned. She was my roommate and she was so messy. Dishes left in the sink, clothes strewn about, picture frames hanging crooked. I tried to fix things while she slept, but she always ruined it. Always brought chaos back into my perfect order. The music box was playing that night. My grandmother's antique music box that I'd wound up to help me sleep. Such a pretty tune. When I saw my roommate's body sprawled at such an ugly angle, I knew what I had to do. I arranged her perfectly, each limb at exactly the right angle, expression peaceful, serene, beautiful. The music box played while I worked, its melody guiding my hands. After that, I couldn't stop seeing the imperfection everywhere. All those people living their chaotic, asymmetrical lives. But I could fix them. I could make them perfect just like me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, gasping for air. The library seemed to tilt and sway around me, the books on the shelves blurring into indistinct shapes. The music box melody echoed in my ears, growing louder, more insistent. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I whirled around to find Dr. Evans standing behind me, his face pale and drawn. "Jane," he said, his voice low and urgent, "we need to talk." Dr. Evans' grip on my shoulder tightened as the room seemed to ripple around me. The library's shelves flickered like static on a broken screen, and for a moment I felt like I was falling, but not in my body. It was a deeper kind of disorientation, like my mind had been peeled back layer by layer, leaving nothing but raw nerves. "I remember now," I whispered, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "I killed them. I killed all of them." Dr. Evans nodded slowly, his glasses catching the light in that unnerving way that erased his eyes. "Yes, Jane, you did. And we've been trying to help you see that for a very long time." The library dissolved in an instant. No slow fade, no gradual dimming, just a blink and it was gone. I was in a concrete room. Stark, cold, and brutally real. The walls were bare, save for the faint scratches I'd apparently carved into the surface over the years, tiny music notes etched in jagged lines. My breath caught as I looked down at my hands. The black veins were gone, the pulsing patterns replaced by pale skin marred with faint scars and calluses. I was wearing a prison jumpsuit. Bright orange, stiff against my skin. Across from me, Dr. Evans, if that was even his name, sat on a metal stool, a thick folder resting on his lap. There was no notebook, no pen, no wire-rimmed glasses. Just a clipboard and a tired, resigned expression on his face. Where's room 613? I croaked, the words clawing their way out of my throat. Dr. Evans didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the folder, pulling out a black and white photograph and sliding it across the table. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. The photo showed a body, posed on the ground in a grotesque tableau, arms and legs bent into inhuman angles. Her face was serene, her lips curved into a faint, unnatural smile. A music box sat beside her, its lid open, though I couldn't hear its melody anymore. "That was your first victim," Dr. Evans said softly. "Your roommate, Hannah Brooks. You arranged her like a doll in your grandmother's music box. You even left a note, calling her your most beautiful creation. Do you remember that now?" I nodded, my stomach churning. The memory was there, sharp and vivid, no longer buried under layers of dreamlike haze. But the room still felt wrong, as if the walls themselves were mocking me. "And the others?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Dr. Evans sighed, sliding more photos across the table. Each one was worse than the last. A woman on her kitchen floor, limbs outstretched at geometric angles. A man in his living room, his face turned toward the camera with a blissful smile painted on his lips. A family of 3 arranged around a dining table, their lifeless bodies posed as if mid-conversation. "You called it art," Dr. Evans said, his voice heavy. "The newspapers called you the music box murderer. Do you remember what you told the judge at your trial?" I shook my head, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to remember. You told the court you weren't guilty because they weren't dead to you. You said they weren't perfect now, that you'd brought them peace. The jury didn't agree. He leaned forward, his expression hardening. That was 12 years ago, Jane. And no matter how many realities your mind invents to protect you, the truth doesn't change. You're not in room 613. You're in solitary confinement, awaiting execution. My pulse roared in my ears, the words hitting me like a physical blow. No, I murmured, shaking my head. That's not possible. I was in the hospital. There were other patients. Emily, Mrs. Albright, the music box. None of it was real, Dr. Evans interrupted, his voice cold now. You've been living inside your own mind, creating scenarios to avoid facing what you did. The hospital was a construct, a way for you to pretend you were the victim. But the truth is you're here, on death row. And your execution is scheduled for tomorrow morning? I staggered back in my chair, the metal scraping loudly against the concrete floor. No, I said again, my voice rising. I don't believe you. Dr. Evans stood, tucking the folder under his arm. You don't have to believe me, Jane. The clock doesn't care if you accept reality or not. He knocked twice on the heavy steel door behind him. It groaned open and 2 guards stepped in, their faces expressionless. As they moved toward me, I caught a glimpse of the hallway beyond, long, gray and empty, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Room 613. It wasn't a hospital ward. It had never been a hospital ward. It was my cell number, the numbers bolted to the steel door that had been my entire world for over a decade. As the guards hauled me to my feet, the faint melody of the music box crept into my mind again, unbidden. I hummed it under my breath as they led me down the corridor, each step echoing like the ticking of a clock. Tomorrow I would die. But as the guards opened the heavy door to the execution chamber, I saw not the sterile gurney I'd expected, but a room full of people. They were all staring at me, their faces familiar. Mrs. Albright, Emily, Miss Davis, and they were smiling. Starlight's End. The old game disc felt wrong in my hands, cold and slick like something dead. I ran my fingers over the faded cover art, barely making out the title. Starlight's End. It was a space exploration game I found tucked away in a box of my sister, Sarah's things, given to me after she and her boyfriend, Mark, disappeared. Mom had called their belongings too painful to keep. Sifting through the remnants of Sarah's life, faded photographs, worn-out clothes, forgotten trinkets, sent a shiver down my spine. And then I found it, nestled amongst a pile of old cassette tapes and drawings. A memory flickered, Sarah's pale face, her whispered plea, "Promise me you won't play it anymore." But her eyes held a strange glint, a mixture of fear and something else. Something I couldn't quite decipher. Why would she give me a game she didn't want me to play? Why would she even have it at all if she was so afraid of it? Come to think of it, I hadn't seen the game since that day, the day she made me promise. It didn't make sense. I pushed the memory aside, curiosity outweighing caution. Besides, they probably just ran away together. Sarah always talked about escaping this town, about traveling the world with Mark, finding someplace where they truly belonged. Maybe she was on a beach somewhere, sipping cocktails and laughing, finally free from the boredom and expectations that suffocated her here. The thought brought a bitter smile to my lips. I dug out my old PlayStation console, its gray plastic casing gathering dust in the corner of my closet. With a trembling hand, I inserted the disc and pressed the power button. The familiar PlayStation logo appeared on the screen, followed by the game's title screen. The music, a haunting orchestral piece, sent a fresh wave of apprehension through me. I navigated through the menus, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. I selected my saved game, eager to continue my exploration of the vast, procedurally generated galaxy. My spaceship, the Stardust, materialized on the screen, orbiting a lush, green planet. Everything seemed normal, exactly as I remembered it. I engaged the thrusters, pulling away from the starting planet. I set a course for a distant star system, eager to discover new worlds. The journey took some time, the vastness of space stretching out before me. I jumped between star systems, charting unexplored territory, encountering strange and wondrous planets. A desert world with towering sandworms, a gas giant with swirling storms of vibrant colors, a frozen moon with hidden caverns of ice crystals. Each planet held its own unique beauty and secrets, and I felt a thrill of discovery with each landing. I don't know what my sister was warning me about. Seemingly nothing was wrong with this game. It was just like I remembered it, vast, beautiful, and full of wonder. But still, a prickle of unease remained, a whisper of doubt in the back of my mind. I decided to head back to the starting system, drawn by a strange sense of curiosity, almost a compulsion. As I approached the familiar green planet, I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The music was its usual cheerful orchestral theme, and the planet's surface, viewed from orbit, was a vibrant tapestry of green forests, blue oceans and snow-capped mountains. I felt a sense of relief, realizing that my fears had been unfounded. I selected a landing site near a dense forest, eager to explore its depths. Touching down on the surface, I switched to the lander module, a small, agile craft designed for planetary exploration. I navigated through the trees, the sunlight dappling through the leaves, creating an almost peaceful atmosphere. But then I saw it. A cave hidden among the trees, its entrance shrouded in shadow. An inexplicable pull drew me towards it, a sense of curiosity mixed with a growing unease. I steered the lander towards the cave, its dark maw beckoning me closer. As I entered the cave, the music shifted, the cheerful melody fading into an unsettling silence. The air grew heavy, a palpable pressure against my chest, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. I continued deeper into the cave, my headlights illuminating the rough, jagged walls. I noticed a vein of a rare mineral glinting in the rock face and decided to extract a sample. I activated the lander's mining laser, its beam cutting through the stone with ease. But as I continued mining, the laser began to sputter, its beam flickering erratically. The lander's system started to malfunction. The lights flickered, the sensors sputtered, and the engine stuttered. Suddenly, the mining laser surged with power, its beam cutting through the cave wall with unexpected force. The lander lurched forward, breaking through the wall and into a hidden chamber. The screen went black. The silence was absolute, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. Then a single chilling thought echoed in my mind: what have I done? A moment later, the words appeared, stark and menacing against the black void: there is no escape. At the same time, a voice, cold and hollow, echoed through the room, seemingly emanating from the very walls themselves. There is no escape, it rasped, the sound turning my blood to ice. The TV screen erupted in a blinding flash of white-blue light, and the deafening roar of static filled the room. But this wasn't ordinary static. Each burst of noise carried fragments of sound, whispers, screams, technological noise that seemed to contain fragments of communication. Voices layered within voices, speaking in languages that hurt to hear. The static intensified, searing my eyes, burning my skin. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. Something was behind me. I could feel its presence, a suffocating weight in the air that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. Then it touched me. Long, clammy fingers closed around my shoulders, one on each side. But these weren't human fingers. They were too long, too jointed, with a texture that was part organic, part digital, as if pixels and flesh had been merged into something entirely unnatural. The fingers tightened their grip, sending waves of information through my body. Not just pain, but pure data, streams of corrupted code that felt like memories that weren't my own. I wanted to scream, to turn around and confront whatever was behind me, but I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare of static and shadow. The fingers seemed to pulse, each touch revealing fractured memories, glimpses of Sarah, of Mark, of moments that couldn't have happened, realities that twisted and merged. The last thing I saw before the darkness consumed me was the pixelated text, now burned into my vision: there is no escape. But as darkness closed in, I heard another voice, faint and distant, yet chillingly familiar. It was Sarah's voice, whispering my name, followed by a single heart-wrenching word: help? Then everything went black. I awoke with a gasp, my body drenched in a cold sweat. The room was dark, the only light emanating from the pulsing green glow of the PlayStation's power button. The air thrummed with an unnatural energy, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist as if alive. I fumbled for the light switch, my hand trembling. The sudden illumination revealed my room, but it felt different, distorted, as if the very walls were closing in on me. The PlayStation was still on, the screen displaying a chaotic mess of static and distorted images. I stumbled towards the console, my mind reeling. What had just happened? Was it a dream? Or something more sinister? As I reached for the power button, a chilling realization washed over me. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. The next morning, I was determined to destroy the game disc. But it was gone. Vanished without a trace. I searched the house, frantically tearing through every drawer and cupboard, but it was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of the game haunted me. But it wasn't just a memory. It was something more invasive. I began to notice strange distortions in my reality. Shadows would move when they shouldn't. Reflections and mirrors would lag a millisecond behind my movements. Technology around me began to malfunction. Phones would display impossible messages, computers would generate code that seemed to be alive. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares plagued me, visions of distorted landscapes, of creatures that defied description, their forms shifting and morphing, their eyes burning with malevolent intent. And always at the heart of these nightmares, Sarah, her face a mask of terror, her voice a desperate plea for help. One night, I was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. It came from outside, from the street below. I rushed to the window and peered out into the darkness. There, in the middle of the street, bathed in an eerie white-blue light, stood a figure that defied description. It was as tall as the lamppost beside it, its form a living fractal of darkness that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Where a body should have been, there was only a constantly shifting mass of geometric impossibilities. Its head was an elongated oval that didn't so much exist in space as suggest the possibility of existence. The eyes were what truly terrified me. They were enormous, stretched wide like ovals, filled with a chillingly familiar human quality. But they weren't eyes in any conventional sense. They were windows, portals that showed fragments of realities. In one moment I saw Sarah. In another, Mark. In another, landscapes that could never exist. Worlds within worlds, all contained in those impossible orbs. Below the eyes, a gaping maw filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth that weren't just physical. They were mathematical constructs, pure algorithmic precision made flesh. They seemed to represent some fundamental truth about the nature of consumption, of transformation. As I watched in horror, the figure turned its head towards me, its gaze locking onto mine. But it wasn't just looking. It was downloading me, parsing my entire existence, breaking me down into fundamental units of information. A chilling smile spread across its face, if you could call that geometrical distortion a smile. Then, a voice echoed directly into my consciousness. It wasn't sound. It was pure information. There is no escape. The words reverberated through my skull, each syllable a hammer blow against my fragile sense of reality. My breath hitched in my throat, my chest constricting with terror. I screamed, but no sound came out. The figure stepped closer, its form flickering and distorting in the dim light filtering through the window. Its eyes burned into mine, and I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. The white-blue light emanating from it intensified, filling my vision, blinding me. I stumbled back, my legs hitting the bed, and I collapsed onto the mattress. The figure loomed over me, its hand reaching down, its claws inches from my face. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. But instead of the sharp pain of its claws, I felt a cold, slimy hand caress my cheek. It trailed down my jawline, sending a fresh wave of terror through me. Then a voice, raspy and chilling, whispered in my ear, "There is no escape, even in your dreams." I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. It was another nightmare, but it felt different this time. More real. More ominous. I knew then that the game wasn't just a game. It was a portal to a dark and terrifying reality, and I was trapped in it. But how? How could a game, a simple collection of code and pixels, have such power? And why me? Why Sarah? A chilling thought crept into my mind. What if it wasn't the game that was the portal? What if it was something else, something closer to home? What if Sarah was somehow involved? The memory of her warning, the strange glint in her eyes, the inexplicable fear, it all seemed to point to something more sinister than I had ever imagined. I shook my head, trying to dispel the thought. It was absurd. Sarah couldn't be the monster. Could she? But another, even more disturbing thought followed close behind. What if this wasn't reality at all? What if I had been trapped in this digital purgatory all along, my memories nothing more than fabricated constructs, designed to lull me into a false sense of security? My stomach churned. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady myself. I needed answers. I needed to understand. I stumbled towards my computer, the familiar glow of the screen a beacon in the darkness. But as I reached for the keyboard, a chilling realization struck me. How could I even be online? If I was truly trapped in some digital hellscape, shouldn't the internet be beyond my reach? Unless the creature, the entity behind this nightmare wanted me to be online. Wanted me to search, to seek answers, to delve deeper into its web of terror. Perhaps it was a game to it, a twisted form of amusement, watching me struggle against the inevitable. My hand hovered over the keyboard, trembling. Should I risk it? Should I venture into the depths of the internet, knowing that it might lead me further into the creature's clutches? But the need for answers, the desperate hope of finding Sarah, outweighed my fear. I took a deep breath and typed in the name of the game, Starlight's End. To my surprise, a link appeared. It was a fan forum dedicated to the game, filled with posts from other players who had experienced strange and unsettling events while playing. But as I scrolled further down the forum, I noticed something strange. There were posts from other users seemingly unrelated to the game that were filled with cryptic warnings and pleas for help. Never and never again, the IES, they see, everything your trap repeat. Starlight END, forever. November 1st, October 28, 2024, 10:52 p.m. Oblivion, oh oblivion, I awaits. The statistike, it consumimis, all, your list. Starlighting, forever. October 30th, November 5th, 2024, 3:17 a.m. Escape, I escape, impossible, the gammy, it haunts, forever, your trap repeat. Starlight Indie, forever. Empty shell, November 12th, 2024, 12:06 a.m. Silence, a silence, eternal, the IES, they watch, always, your doomid. Starlight Indie, forever. Screaming Void, November 19th, 2024, 8:42 p.m. Consumed, see consumed, by the void, the statistike, it takis, everything you're gunny. Starlight Indie, forever. Corrupted Soul, November 21st, 2024, 10:11 p.m. Alone, alone, in the darknessness, the IES, they see, everything you're list. Starlight Indie, forever. Abyss Watcher, November 24th, 2024, 1:05 a.m. Prisoner, prisoner, of the Kudi, the gammy, it holds, you, forever, your trap repeat. Starlight Indie, forever. Phantom Gamer, November 25th, 2024, 9:33 p.m. Eternity, a eternity, of torment, the statistike, it neverines, your cockled. Starlight Indie, forever. Eternal Screams, November 26, 2024, 12:47 a.m. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrolled through the increasingly disturbing messages. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. Was I going insane? Was this all real? That I saw it. A post, dated years ago with a username I recognized instantly, Space Girl. My sister's online alias. It whispers promises of escape, of freedom, of a world beyond your wildest dreams. But it's a lie. A trap. A cage of starlight and shadow. Don't be fooled by its beauty, its allure. It hungers. It craves. It consumes. It took me. We'll take you too. Don't play the game. Don't say its name. Don't even think it. Forget you ever saw it. Forget you ever knew it existed. It's the only way to escape its grasp. But it's already too late for me. I can hear it calling. The static. Guys. They're everywhere. They're coming for me. Help me. Space Girl, June 12, 2018, 11:59 p.m. The words seemed to claw at my soul, their chilling message echoing the warning Sarah had given me years ago. Her fear, her desperation, it all came flooding back to me. I could almost hear her voice, whispering in my ear, pleading with me to stop. But I couldn't. I had to find her. I remembered a comment on another forum, a cryptic message about a hidden level in Starlight's End, a place where the laws of physics break down and strange creatures roam. Could this be the key to finding Sarah? I scrolled back up, determined to find the post. There it was, along with a chilling warning, if you've lost your disc, the post read, you can still play. But be warned, once you start down this path, there's no turning back. He posted this before he even mentioned finding the hidden level. I realized, a chill running down my spine. How did he know? Was he already being influenced by the game? I hesitated, my finger hovering over the download button. Was this a trap? Was I walking into something even more sinister than I could imagine? But the thought of Sarah, trapped somewhere within the game's code, spurred me on. I clicked the button and the download began. Hours later, with the emulator installed and the game files loaded, I launched Starlight's End. The familiar title screen appeared, but this time, there was a new option in the menu, the end. I clicked on it and the screen went black. A cold wave of static washed over me, and I recoiled from the monitor, my skin prickling with an unseen energy. Then 2 words materialized in the center of the screen, glowing with an eerie green light, welcome. But below it, in a smaller, flickering font, was another message, one that made my blood run cold. She never wanted to be found. The familiar title screen appeared, but the cheerful music was replaced by a haunting melody that seemed to claw at my soul. The image of the lush green planet was now a twisted, corrupted version of itself, the vibrant colors replaced by sickly greens and browns. The game loaded, and a new message appeared on the screen, stark and chilling against the corrupted backdrop. "She's waiting for you." And then I saw her. Sarah. But her pixelated form was off. Her eyes were wider, her smile too broad, revealing teeth that seemed just a little too sharp. She stood on the bridge of the Stardust, and though her form was blocky and low resolution, I could sense the malice radiating from her. "Hello, blue brother," she said, her voice a digitized rasp that sent chills down my spine. "I've been waiting for you." Fear threatened to overwhelm me, but I pressed on. This was it. This was my chance to save her, to bring her back. "Sarah, it's me. We have to get out of here." Her smile widened, becoming a grotesque parody of happiness. "There is no out anymore. This is our forever now." The screen dissolved into static, and I found myself no longer in the familiar cockpit of the Stardust, but in a dark, claustrophobic space. The walls pulsed with a sickly green light, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. Sarah was there, but her form was no longer human. She was a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and pixels, her limbs elongated and twisted, her eyes huge and black, devoid of any warmth or recognition. "Don't you see?" she hissed, her voice a chorus of distorted whispers. "We're free here. Free from the limitations of that pathetic world. We can be anything, do anything, become anything." She lunged at me, her claws outstretched. I screamed and tried to dodge, but it was too late. Her claws raked across my face, and I felt a searing pain, not just physical but something deeper, something that tore at my very soul. Then I was falling, tumbling through an endless void of static and darkness. Images flashed before my eyes, distorted memories of Sarah, of Mark, of the creature with the impossible eyes, all swirling together in a chaotic vortex. I landed with a bone-jarring thud, my vision swimming. I was back in my room, the familiar surroundings warped and distorted, the walls pulsating with the same sickly green light as the chamber in the game. Sarah was there, her form flickering in and out of focus. "There is no escape," she whispered, her voice a chilling echo of the creature's. I tried to run, to fight, but my limbs felt heavy, my movements sluggish. The static intensified, filling my senses, overwhelming me. And then I saw it. The creature. It emerged from the static, its form towering over me, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. It reached for me, its claws outstretched, and I knew that this was the end. But as its claws closed around me, I felt a strange sense of peace. The fear, the pain, the confusion, it all faded away, replaced by a numb acceptance. I was home. I was with Sarah. Forever. The screen went black. The PlayStation's power light blinked once, then twice, and then went out. The only sound was the faint hum of the computer, its fan whirring like a dying breath. The game disc lay on the floor, its surface shimmering with an eerie green light. And as I watched, a single word materialized on its surface, etched in glowing green letters. Forever.